all of a sudden people are driving along and they're prepared for rain. They're prepared for some things to disrupt, but they're not prepared for a bomb on turn two that causes them to completely reroute. And then a riot at the concession stand, which is causing another reroute. And all those things are what we've been dealing with. And human beings are just not capable of dealing with that much change and being able to do it efficiently. And it's those companies that have the systems in place that can see those things and react to those things that make a difference.
Welcome to today's episode of Staying Curious. I'm your host, Amy Hirschkel, and today's guest is Greg Buzek. Greg is the founder and president of IHL Group, a global research and advisory firm for the retail industry, and one of the founders of the Retail Orphan Initiative, a charitable foundation that seeks to help the 400 million orphaned and vulnerable children around the world. In 12 years, Retail ROI has been involved in over 220 projects in 27 countries, helping an estimated 252,000 children through clean water, education, computers, language, training, and care. He has 32 years of experience in market analysis, product development, and consulting with Fortune 500 companies. Please join me in welcoming Greg to our podcast. Hi, Greg. We're so happy to have you here with us on the show today.
Hi, Amy. It's great to be with you today.
Perfect. Great. I just wanted to kind of get started. You know, I ran through some of the great experience that you have, and I'd love to just have you sort of sum up for the audience. What is IHL Group?
Yeah, so we're a retail and hospitality analyst firm. So we provide data, insight, trends, work with retailers and restaurants on technology, what needs to be deployed, what is the market doing, how do you benchmark against yourselves, and then we work with vendors as well to look at what are the big trends, what is the opportunity. I think the thing that makes us a little different is where other analyst firms will look at the forest view for trends and high level trends. We're able to get down to the tree level and bark level on certain things, and we're most known for that intersection of stores and e-commerce.
So tell us a little bit about some of the types of problems that IHL is solving, and sort of kind of in that sort of talk about how it even came to be. Like, where did you see this need?
Oh, well, gosh, it started originally is an arm's length research firm that could explain to clients how we arrived at the data. And one of the big frustrating things for me, I was previously a product manager in the technology field. And what was frustrating is I would get a research report, but I could never talk to the actual analyst that wrote the report. Or I could never talk to them about how the market might change with my new product in the market. So those were the key things that got us started. But a funny thing happened along the way is all our clients all started to grow up and got into executive roles. And so we grew up as well in terms of the strategies and the types of research that we do. And it's more focused on a management side and in many ways at a broader portfolio level than just at the individual product level.
So what kind of trends are you seeing? Like, what kind of, you say you get into like the tree level. So obviously you're getting very granular in your information. So what are the trends you're seeing at that level? Maybe we could dive a little bit deeper into them.
Yeah, well, at the higher level for your audience, the big trends, were really forced upon the industry due to COVID. And that was the rise of e-commerce. We essentially, in some sectors, saw 10 years of organic growth in 3 months of e-commerce. And that created what we would call a once-in-a-lifetime or once-in-a-generation tech reset. The average e-commerce, pure play e-commerce company spends about 8% of revenue on IT, where the typical brick and mortar retail was only spending 1.5% to 2%. So something had to give here. And so what we saw is anywhere from 25 to 40% increase in IT spend that was required as a result of COVID. And now it's just a matter of what is staying, what is a long-term issue, what is a short-term issue as things opened up again. And now that we're going to slower time of economy, that margin preservation is a huge piece of it. So most all technical spend right now is related to three things. One, it is related to how do I reduce the amount of labor that's required to operate because I cannot get the labor for my stores and for my warehouses. Number two, how do I get my digital channels profitable? Because digital orders tend to be anywhere from 5 to 15% less margin by the time it's over due to the added cost than a typical walk-in consumer is. And in that for fashion is a big thing around
Yeah.
returns and pieces of that part of it. And then the last piece is the inventory visibility. Where is that inventory? How fast can I get it? It used to be that H&M and Zara were the big groups there. Well, we've got even faster retailers now in terms of turning product and the seasons and things like that. So, how do you do more with less? How do you affect the labor side? But how do you improve the margins? And how do you fix this return thing in particular when it comes to the fashion
So are
side?
you feeling like all of those sort of challenges that are coming up should all be addressed? Or are you sort of guiding people to kind of focus on one more than the other?
Well, it's really a race to the best data, to clean data. And I think that's the challenge. And every retailer's in a different space. And the winning retailers are doubling down on IT spend, and they're doing all of those things. Now, they may not be doing it all with just their own in-house personnel. They'll be using partners and things to help. But it's not just about doing one thing and then getting that done and doing other things. You've got to do them all in tandem, which makes it a bit difficult in a lot of cases. But the need is so pervasive because the margin loss is so strong there that you've got to deploy this technology, or you're going to be left behind because it's really a race to clean data. Who has the most accurate data? Who's deployed RFID? They know where the product is, not only that it's in your store still, but where in the store it is if you need to ship it, so you're not wasting time walking around for that. Do you have a separate location in your store for your e-commerce orders? How do you handle returns? Are those optimized to get back on the shelf, to go back to a manufacturer? Those things are areas where they're just bleeding retailers dry because that growth is no longer there for the sales that covers over that multitude of sins, so to speak. And so those investments moving to better analytics, things like loss prevention and store performance and employee performance are big areas of investment for prescriptive analytics, to where it's not just, hey, what happened or why it happened, but this is what we should be doing here. And maybe we got a system that actually makes those decisions for us based on the data.
And are you finding that your clients are receptive to that? Obviously we work in a technology company, and whenever you tell somebody they have to invest in technology and they have to get their IT infrastructures up, it's almost like a two steps forward, one step forward, two steps back kind of thing. Like everybody's like, yes, we all need this, but then price becomes an issue. Are you finding that they're receptive to these understandings that you're proposing to them, or?
Yeah, but in a way, it's almost as divided as the politics of our day is. Different people get different messages. When we're talking to the IT people within an organization, they get it. They get it right away and they understand it. If we're talking to the loss prevention people, they get it. They really understand the issues and the challenges that are being faced at the store level. When you get to the merchants, it's a little less understanding. So if it's a merchant driven company, they tend to be far less likely to be accepting the technological change there and slower. And it's really to their demise because, on the one hand, they may be very good at predicting trends. And that still is the biggest thing when it comes to fashion is how good are you predicting what the customer wants to buy. But the flip side of that is the speed at which things are changing. You need systems that can recognize that because they can recognize it much faster than a human being can recognize it, and to be able to make the changes to be more efficient so that you don't lose that margin is a big deal. And we've got this disconnect, particularly in fashion, where some of the orders got to be in 6 to 9 months before we go to the season. And unfortunately, the changes that are happening so dramatically. Like, for instance, right now in October and November alone, there were over 400,000 less truckloads of merchandise shipped into LA and Long Beach than we had the year before. 400,000 containers less. That's how fast things have changed and have dropped. In a year's time, a container went from $22,000 to ship from overseas to just over $2,000 into LA and Long Beach. Um, and just as where it went up tremendous during COVID, it's dropping extremely fast now. And those kind of dynamics are affecting the marketplace. And the ability for things to happen. I've kind of been looking for the right analogy here, but whether it's fashion or whether it's CPG companies, retail used to be the Unitarian Jeep, the military Jeep. It could do anything. It could run on any kind of road and operate, etc. But we tweaked it and we kept tweaking it, and it got to be more of a race car type mentality. And I wouldn't put it as high as efficient as NASCAR or Formula One by any stretch, but all of a sudden people are driving along and they're prepared for rain. They're prepared for some things to disrupt, but they're not prepared for a bomb on turn two that causes them to completely reroute. And then a riot at the concession stand, which is causing another reroute. And all those things are what we've been dealing with. And human beings are just not capable of dealing with that much change and being able to do it efficiently. And it's those companies that have the systems in place that can see those things and react to those things that make a difference. We saw it in the CPG company with computer aided ordering. Those systems saw that the speed at which people were buying toilet paper meant you needed to buy 40 times more toilet paper during the initial piece of the pandemic. Well, we wiped out 4 months worth of inventory in 2.5 weeks, and the people that could react fastest got that inventory and made those sales. The flip side of that as well is, how do you slow down when you're seeing things, and how do you move merchandise around within that season and being able to react quickly for that? And those that tend to be more merchant driven, by the gut type of leaders there, are far more likely to make those mistakes than those that have a bunch of discipline on the end from a system standpoint. And when you combine the two together and the merchants trust the systems and what they're seeing there, it can be a really powerful
Yeah,
thing.
so it's not really, so I think, the merchant gets nervous because, like you said, they have this, they made their whole life on this gut instinct. We know what's coming, we know what the trends are going to be, but now that everything's so much faster, we can't have the 6 month life cycle of a garment or a trend. It's 1 month, 2 months, 2 weeks, whatever, it's changing. It seems like they're
Right.
they're not willing to let that go. But what you're saying is, it's not, we need your talent, but you also need technology and your talent to really be like the winner.
And there's a trust side of things. We like to joke that most merchants in fashion, they went to the side of school where math wasn't required, and thus they don't trust the math when it comes to the pure IT side of things, where the algorithms and things are in play there. And so there's a need to kind of merge those two together. And the companies that have been able to do that effectively are the ones that are best performing, and they're able to predict the trends faster and then take advantage of those.
Do you
trends.
have an example of a company you've worked with, maybe not a fashion, but something sort of similar, that where they were sort of a little stuck with their old ways, but then they realized the success with the technology?
Well, I think there's pieces of it that you see when it comes to the whole athleisure market there, and that's been the benefit of the trend plus the technology and the culture of the company taking advantage of that. Where you see the downside of that is generally in our department store category. We did a study that looked at did your trust level in your local stores improve or decrease in trust in the last 2 years. And what we found is less than 0.7% of people said their trust in department stores increased in the last 2 years to have what they wanted to buy. The flip side of that is Amazon was 34%. So 0.7 versus 34% increase in trust associated with things there. So that's the negative side of it. And that is just the fact that a lot of times the product is dated. It's not in the right sizes at the local store. and thus people are simply just no longer going to the stores because they don't trust that it's there anymore. But then you have others that it's still really a positive to go there, like Lululemon or even Levi's or some of the Nike stores, where you're seeing that marriage of technology, the direct to consumer benefits, as well as keen marketing, all wrapped together, and they're doing quite well right now. Even today in the earnings call, Nike was released there, and that spurred the entire stock market because of positive earnings as a result.
So what are the technologies you're finding? Two things. One, that you wish most retailers would implement, and then which are the ones they're most willing to implement?
Yeah, I think the most critical one for fashion right now is probably RFID. You want, if you've got a, let me step back a second. I'm making the assumption that you've gotten to a single version of the truth of your data. You've got to a order management system, a single order management system here. Those are baseline things that you've got to do if you've not done that yet. But then RFID, particularly with your inventory at the store level, you need to know where the item is in your store, not just if it's in the store or not. When you have a season that is 21 days in some cases and you're shipping from store, you need to know where it is in the store, or you're spending a lot of labor running around the store looking for items that you got to ship for an e-commerce order that's been in place there. Other parts of it is really process, and it's not even necessarily technology per se. It's related to the process of how you handle returns. How do you decide where returns go? How are those handled? Because that is the biggest margin drop is because of returns in fashion. So if it was me, I would be investing in getting to sizing technology that is goes across all of my different types of products within my store, so that I can give comfort to that customer that they buy the right size, that's the right size for every item in the store is going to fit similarly if it's a size 10, for instance. A size 10 is a size 10 in the store across all of the categories. There, I would be investing in that. And I would also be investing in, are there broader cooperatives there where a size 10 from store to store is the same? Or size 10 across all the brands within your portfolio is the same. Because right now, that is the biggest driver for all the returns. People will buy 3, they'll return 2 for that. And it's just sucking the life out of things. I mean, women's dresses right now, the return rate is over 90% for women's dresses purchased online. That's just not sustainable. It's not sustainable from a economic standpoint, but it's not sustainable from an environmental standpoint either. And those are major challenges.
Yeah, and it's also
there.
consumer loyalty. I mean, if they start to recognize that the size fits them and it's across everything, they will stay loyal to that brand. You said an interesting thing too. It's not even just, one brand. It's multiple. If you have multiple brands, letting them know that, you can pick the right size. And that would just increase consumer loyalty. So it's a really interesting point there. These the returns is probably one of the biggest reasons why we have so much waste. It's not the only reason why we also overproduce as well. But if we can slow down the rate of the return, and I've also been hearing I've been seeing a lot of brands and retailers getting rid of free return shipping for that reason, because they're getting crushed by the cost of all the returns. Because like you said, they'll buy 3 sizes just to see which one will fit.
Yeah, Amazon was a perfect example there. This was like 8 years ago. They were spending about $9 billion a year on shipping, and returns was the biggest problem that they had. And I've been a firm believer that the Whole Foods acquisition was more about having a place to return and consolidate returns as it was trying to get into the grocery industry. It was a way of getting into the grocery industry at high margins, but it's just as important to have a place where they can return items at no cost.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. It's also very easy, much easier for us. We have one down the street, and I love it.
Yep.
So you kind of touched briefly on AI, artificial intelligence. So how has AI as an emerging technology being implemented, and how should it be implemented, in your opinion?
Yeah, the biggest area where it's been implemented so far has been in the area of store performance, and analytics there, prescriptive analytics and store performance. And what we're finding is right now, the people that already have that installed to align how should my store, what should my labor be in my store for different things? What should my shelves be allocated? How should my store clusters be done? Everything related to labor hours and just how the overall performance of the stores. Those people that are using prescriptive analytics already in that area are expecting sales growth for 2023 that's 13 times that of others that have not deployed that technology right now. But to get to AI, to be effective with AI, there's a couple things that are prerequisites. One, you have to have that single version of the truth of your data. You have to have lots of data, and that data needs to be clean data. So it is actually, you're not getting garbage from multiple systems. You're getting accurate data from all your systems that are going into those decisions. And then the last piece that most people don't do is spend the time to tag that data as to what it is. And then once you have all those prerequisites in place, then the machines simply take over. And we're seeing massive growth there in those categories: store performance, employee performance, and then loss prevention. Literally, those people that are using prescriptive analytics in those categories are seeing 81% higher sales growth for 2023, their plans for those technologies because of that. But you've got to have that clean data. And that's really what I believe the race for the next 5 years is. We were at first, we were looking at things like uh, better tools for associates. We rolled out some mobile devices, et cetera. And then it became about unified commerce and getting to systems that could go across the different channels. We've spent the last couple of years working on the inventory accuracy, and we still don't have that all figured out there. But we've got tools like RFID and computer vision and those kind of things to assist the process. We are quickly moving into that AI and machine learning on operational issues, everything from workforce management, inventory and supply chain things, shelf space management there, losses. It was a briefing yesterday of computer vision technology that reviews things that are happening in the lanes as well as at self checkout and other things. They have the ability to lock the cart when there appears to be too much of a product getting thrown into a basket at one time. That is a big loss area where organized retail crime has a habit of doing things like that. They're able to lock the carts down in the middle of the aisles and have their store personnel query that person before they get to the point at the front of the store where it's too late. So there's a variety of different areas where AI and machine learning is being used, but having that data, that's a lot of data, that's tagged data, and then that's clean data is a prerequisite.
Yeah, easier said than done, that's for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit. The
Mhm.
retail ROI, the initiative you
Yeah.
started.
Put that other hat
Yeah,
on.
let's
You
talk
want to put
about
that
that.
other.
What drove you to create that?
Well, it wasn't just me that created it, but for me personally, it's a spiritual calling. I was a product manager on loss prevention technology years ago, and saw a miracle happen in the midst of that product development. Something that was meant to be basically a break-even product ended up making the company $100 million. And it kind of left me with like, okay, what do you do after that? $200 million product. It was rather empty as an accomplishment. And at the same time, I was getting involved in my church, and went to lunch with one of the pastors there, and he said, "Hey, we need help in missions." I said, I'm a business guy. I don't see how that's put together there. And needless to say, soon I was looking at doing a mission trip, and it was coming down to the country of Liberia uh, to go there. And the only thing I knew about that was that they had um, the guy that I knew that has been there. He had malaria 3 times. He's had an 8-year-old hold an AK-47 pointed at him there. And the country was about to go into civil war. And I was driving up on I-95 in Boca Raton, Florida, just praying. I said, if I'm supposed to go there, I need like that burning bush thing that's there in the Bible. I need a burning bush. And as I'm literally praying that, there's a guy pushing his car up the side of the road that says, "I support Liberia" on the bumper sticker on the
Oh,
back of his car.
chills.
Um, yes, yes, that got my attention. And I started the process, and I was never able to go because the country went into civil war. And then I started IHL, and fast forward to basically almost 15 years later, um, I would went. A friend of mine called out of the blue and said, "Hey, they're going to honor me down at this conference because there's been more adoptions that have occurred through our little program called For Kids than any other program in the country. And can you come down for this?" And I went down to this conference not knowing why I was there or literally what was going on. And but I knew my heart was stirred about this problem of orphans and vulnerable kids. And I was surprised that I had a little part in what was happening there. And there was a quote from Dennis Rainey. He shared a quote from Winston Churchill, and he says, "There comes into the life of every man a cause for which he's uniquely suited. What a pity if that moment finds him unwilling or unprepared for that which may become his finest hour." And that quote grabbed my heart and said, all this stuff about going to Liberia and all that stuff I started years ago became about orphans and vulnerable kids. So fast forward to 6 months later, we're at Oracle Open World, and there's a gentleman by the name of Paul Singer. Paul was the chief information officer for Target. He was the guy that took over for Dave Thomas of Wendy's, lobbying Congress for funds for foster kids and adoption. And we met there and said, wouldn't it be great if we did something in the industry and we'll just call it retail ROI? We'll just, return on investment. We'll just call it ROI. And we left there, met with 6 friends outside. They all thought it was a great idea. And we signed the paperwork. Now we got a charity. 3 days after we signed the paperwork, Paul called and he said, "Greg, I just heard from the surgeon. I've got a brain tumor." And he had surgery the week later, and it fell to me to lead the organization. So that's how we got started. And so we have a big fundraiser every year at National Retail Federation called Super Saturday, where we bring the best speakers we've seen all year long in for free. We treat it like ladies' night at a bar. We invite all the buyers of technology, all retailers in for free, attend for free, and then we sell sponsorships to technology companies. And that information and that money we've partnered with Feet on the Street charities and been able to help about 265,000 kids in the last 10 years.
That's incredible.
Built 20, I think it's 24 schools now. We're in 27 countries now with projects, and it's really been a great community building thing in the industry for us, and just some really deep friendships by getting outside of just selling widgets every day. And having a broader cause and a broader reason for what we do every day than just selling stuff.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, sounds amazing. I actually was looking at the Super Saturday thing, and just the reaction from people is tremendous.
Yeah.
People who normally go about their business and just sort of skip this kind of part, we're having a tremendous reaction. Right. Was fantastic.
Yeah, and my biggest job is turning the light bulb on. And for your listeners, one of the things that we're really going to attack for 2024 Super Saturday is the cause of foster care in the United States. We're seeing our country, we're seeing rise in crime and rise in poverty, et cetera. And a lot of that can be traced back to a child that is forced into foster care because of something that their parents did. Right now, the turnover rate for social workers, if there's one social worker on a case for the time that kid is in custody, in state custody, they find permanence. Let's see, 74.5% of the time, which means they get adopted, they find a permanent home, some whether it's family care or whatever, 74% of the time. If there's any turnover whatsoever, that drops to only 17% of the time. And right now we're seeing turnover rates that range from 50 to 60 to 70% in some states. And we found a program that can reduce that turnover and has been effective at reducing that turnover and can have a huge impact, because when a girl ages out of foster care, 71% of the girls that age out of foster care have a child already by the age of 18. and 30% have two children by the age of 21. A boy that ages out has been incarcerated at least once by the age of 19. There, the conviction rate is like three times that of the general population. And at age 26, the incomes are less than half. And at age 26, they're seven times more likely to be on state aid and federal aid than the general population. So that one little thing of turnover of the social worker really creates a generational curse a lot of times for some of these kids. And we have the ability as an industry and as a people group to impact that. And that's going to be our focus as we go into 23 and 24.
So how can people help the mission, like people, like myself or anybody listening?
Yeah, if you want to be involved, there's going to be a need to build a database of all the agencies that are involved, and as well as the charities that are involved that have the relationships with the agencies. Right now, as we speak, there are 36 Apple stores in the Northeast that are the employees are writing thank you notes for foster or for social workers to thank them for what they do. So some of it is just that, but other times it's, hey, will you buy lunch for the social workers, flowers for their birthday, etc. And companies can't necessarily do that because of ethics laws. So they have to go through a charity that already has those relationships. They can donate to the charity, then the charity can buy those things on the behalf of a social worker. But the key thing is to basically elevate these social workers to a level that we venerate firefighters. There, when a child is removed from their home, from a foster care situation, there's two people that walk into the house. One is a police officer with a Kevlar vest, and the other one's a social worker who actually leaves with the child, that takes the child away. It's an incredibly stressful job that doesn't pay real well today. So how do we come alongside those people, just like we do teachers, and try to bless them to do it? Because the average social worker has 40 cases. So that's 40 kids that get lost in the system if they leave their job. And that's a real challenge. So where we need help is we're building a database not only of the state agencies that are in the local jurisdictions, but also the charities that are in that. So it's just a matter of doing some research work and putting that database together. So when we share this on a broader scale, and companies say, we want to be involved, great, here are your connections and here are your contacts to get started, and this is the way to get engaged. And so we're building that for the next year, so people can reach out to us. You just reach out to me at Greg at retailroi.org if you want to be a part of that. But then there's also going to be a need for funding. There's going to be a need for people to get involved in their local communities, to write thank you notes, like I said, to bring lunch there, to help them out and come alongside those social workers to make a difference.
Wow, that's incredible. And it seems like, it's always so simple sounding, like, you just have to do a simple little act, like thank somebody, and it can make a world of difference. And sometimes you just forget, I love that part where you said elevate them to the status of a firefighter. Not only does it make them feel proud of what they do, but then more people will want to do that job. People like that kind of thing. So,
and so that is that's my job, is to turn that light bulb on and make some connections for people. The people that are listening to your podcast, the people that in our industry, they are go-getters. They're generally go-getters, and they don't need much. They just need to be connected. And how do we do this in a way that's safe to do that, to stretch across these lines? And a lot of times there's racial, it's ethnic lines, but it's also economic lines as well. And just how do you make those introductions in a way that's safe? And then you just say go, because these people will go when it happens. We've had people that helped us build a kitchen in one place, and next thing we know, they're chairman of the board of an anti-trafficking organization, because they got introduced on a trip and that light bulb got turned on. It's like I said, it's pointing in a direction and just say, go, this is what you can do, and get involved. And it's really powerful. So we have the people that can help with that, to provide the education and the knowledge for that. We just need some people to help us build out the infrastructure there to do so.
Wow. Well, thank you. Well, thank you for doing all of that. Being the light bulb turner-oner, we need more of you for sure.
Yeah.
So now I'd like to switch gears a little bit and do our sort of our lightning round portion.
Mhm.
I'm just going to kind of ask you a couple of things and just have you respond. So could you give me one emerging technology that is going to be critical to the success of fashion companies moving forward, or for retail companies moving forward?
Yeah, it's returns management. I think that is the single biggest thing right now for those retailers, because they've got to get that's a factor of survival.
Fantastic. And what is the current trend in retail that is being overlooked on the impact it can have on brands?
I think it's really the fixing the efficiency of the inventory process and having in stock what the retailer or the consumer really wants to buy. When we studied that with Amazon versus other retailers, and we saw how bad it was for the local retailers, we also studied the number of people that were Amazon Prime customers. And when you add impulse items to the equation as well, Amazon Prime members, when you get them to the store, spend about 70% more of their ticket on impulse items than those people that are not Prime members. So when they have a distrust, or they no longer trust that local retailer, you're not only losing out on the original sale, but those impulse items as well. So we've got this negative cycle that is there. And that all comes down to inventory accuracy, having what we want to that they want to buy, but actually knowing what you have and where it is, et cetera, so that you can make the sale. And that is the big thing that's missing right now.
What is one piece of advice you would give a CEO of a fashion retailer that is hesitant on trying new innovative solutions?
Um, Start looking for a new job. You know, I don't say that to be flippant, and it's not going to be all about machines, but it is going to be a hybrid of merchants and machines. And I think the vast majority of CEOs get that now, that are still in play, because the rise of the e-commerce piece and what's happening. The It's going to be really, really interesting when we get through the holidays here. People are have way too much inventory for what they can sell right now, and it's a game of chicken after the holidays between gift cards and things there, and there are going to be tremendous discounts because I think I looked at it. I think we have about $175 billion more in inventory this holiday season than we had last year. And at the same time, sales are down if you factor in inflation, so on a per unit basis there. So there are going to be a lot of challenges for fashion retailers, with the exception of athleisure and a few other categories, come end of fiscal year. And those people that are not willing to try these innovative solutions and move towards the AI and machine learning, getting to RFID and getting to that accurate inventory there and being able to react quicker, are simply going to be left behind. And it'll manifest itself in sales. It'll manifest itself in a variety of different ways. But when you have high interest rates like we do now, you can't afford to carry that inventory going forward. So you've got to get rid of it, and you've got to get better at having in stock what the customer wants to buy when they want to buy it, and get rid of this inventory distortion, or limit it as much as you possibly can. So that is the key thing there that I see. But like I said, getting back to that first one, the returns is a huge problem because it's milk and dry.
Perfect. Well, Greg, I cannot thank you enough for your time today. I feel incredibly enlightened by our conversation, so thank you. And for anyone who wants to get in touch with Greg, he mentioned the email at greg@retailroi.org, as well as connecting with him through IHL at www.ihlservices.com. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate your time. And thank you to everyone listening in. I just want to remind you to like and subscribe to our social media pages and visit our website to see more upcoming podcasts in the future. And I want to remind you to continue to stay curious. Have a fantastic day.